There are people who choose to make a positive difference in the world. Our job is to bring you their stories to motivate you to do the same. Join us each week, host John Alexander and Naimah Latif, as we bring you the educators, entertainers, elected officials, religious leaders, and community activists whose works are transforming this world. Find out how you can make a difference too. Be inspired. Watch The Media Connection.
Legacy Bookstore and Cafe. This is very familiar to everyone here. It should be. It is a center of socially conscious activity, and it's in that spirit that we bring Sister Naimah Latif. And just a real quick story. My wife and I were riding from out of town one day, and I had the book Psychic Trauma, and I was reading through it, flipping through it, and I flipped to the back, and something just said, call this sister up. Call this sister up. And I didn't think I was going to reach her, but by the grace of God, she answered the phone, and from that point on, she accepted the invitation to come on to the radio program on Wednesdays. And I think we've been doing it for about a month. And, I haven't gauged the ratings, but I tell you what, Wednesdays is by far my best day on the radio program because it's educational, you hear a lot of talk radio, but, it's something that every show you can gain something from. So I definitely want to welcome the sister and definitely appreciate her being here. But when we speak about being socially conscious, I'd be remiss if I didn't step back and honor those elders who have come before me. And this is what this is about. Getting back to the point where we understand community and the basis of community. We've talked, and I was a former elected official, and a lot of times we talk about the problems that plagued our community. And I'll be honest, I didn't understand as much then as I understand now, really just by being privy to the works of this sister and privy to the works of dear brother Sultan Latif. May Allah forgive him his sins and bless him with a paradise. So I want to welcome my brother Zaki Baruti and ask him to come up. Zaki Baruti. And I should say President Zaki Baruti. He's kind of modest, but he's our president. He's the President General of UAPO. So with that, brother, I want you to welcome the sister here.
First and foremost, giving honor to the Creator, I'd like to greet everyone in the universal language of peace. Assalamu alaikum. And just before I introduce our beautiful sister, let's give a well-deserved round of applause to our good brother, Talib Amin, just for having the vision to ask that we have the wisdom of our sister being here. Life is real short, and in the process of life, it's very important as males and females that we establish family life. And it's also very beautiful in my mind, in the eyes of the Creator, that when you have two people that consummate in terms of marriage on the same page within the context of their marriage as it relates to their world outlook, as well as the kind of struggle that they engage in. And having been blessed many years ago to have met Brother Sultan Latif, and may be in paradise, and we salute the work that he has done along with his beautiful wife. It's just an honor to have a sister who looked upon her fellow husband, fellow soldier in the struggle, to say that I will continue the work that must be done to rise up a group of people here in this country that are lost in terms of their history, are lost in terms of the involvement that needs to be done to transform all of the negative kinds of things that impact our community that I know everyone in here is aware of. So it's in that spirit that I'd like to, on behalf of our organization, the Universal African Peoples Organization, on behalf of you that's here, on behalf of those who may not be here, who could not be here, to welcome you, to give you a hearty welcome here to the city of St. Louis. And one last thing, in that I was a former candidate for governor, we don't say not just here to St. Louis, but to the whole state of Missouri, her presence that we've been honored and warmed by as she deals with, as Brother Sultan dealt with, some heavy psychological issues impacting our community. So a hearty welcome to our beautiful sister, Naimah Latif. I'm only going to be here for about a half an hour edition because I have another commitment, but I had to be here to at least be here in your presence. So may God bless you, and may the kind of information that you share with those who are here stimulate everybody to continue into the struggle, because our children are in dire need. And I know everybody know that, right? So hopefully this just reinforces that dire need for us to set the example, and surely you are setting the example. God be with you. Peace.
Well, I thank you, all of you. And I want to send my greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum. You are here, of course, because you heard a word on the radio, and something in your soul told you to come and hear a message. But really, you heard the words of your soul coming from my mouth, and that's why you're here. Because inside, you know that you're on a mission. Now, we know in our community that there are two kinds of people. There are the conscious and the unconscious. And the conscious people know that they're conscious, but the unconscious people don't know they're unconscious. So you know that your mission is to awaken the unconscious. And I've been blessed. I've been truly blessed to go on a life's journey. It's taken me all the way back to the past and all the way into the future. And so today I'm going to share that journey with you, and then we'll look at our mission for what we're to do in the future to change our condition. You know, all of us at some point, in looking at our society, we realize that something is wrong, something's out of balance, something is incorrect. And particularly when we see the racial condition, and then we see that there are some people who seem to have everything, have the control, and then there's some people who are suffering. And we notice it's along racial lines. Now think about it. When did you first notice that there was a racial imbalance? When did you first become conscious of racism, conscious that black people were in an inferior position? Think about it. What was that first incident that raised your consciousness and made you realize that we're not being treated right? How many of you would say that you were less than 7 years old? Think of that first incident of racism when you recognized something was wrong. It's pretty young. And most of us, we realize that there's something wrong very early. And that's why we have a child on the cover of this book, because it's in childhood that the trauma first begins. As a human being, you know that you are supposed to be loved and nurtured, and you're supposed to matter. But when something happens where you are told that you are not worthy of love, you are less than worthy of life, something in your spirit is damaged. And that's where the trauma comes in. Being made to feel that you are not worthy of life, you are not worthy of love. We first began the journey in writing this book. We met a man named Fode Musa Suso. How many people saw the movie Roots? Pretty much everybody saw that. You know, Alex Haley, he went back to Africa, to the Gambia, and he met a man who was an oral historian who had recorded the history of their people in his memory. And he recited all the names of the people, and when he finally got all the way back to Kunta Kinte, that's when Alex Haley knew that was my ancestor. Well, we met his nephew, the actual griot, the oral historian, living in Chicago. He's a musician, and we happened to see him on TV one day, and we went to talk to him, and he said, oh yes. See, in Africa, history is recorded according to family lineages. And of course, you read the Bible. How many people read the Bible? Read the Bible, of course, in the book of Numbers, Exodus. It talks about who begat who and begat who and begat who, and they went here and went there. So you trace history by the people and their offspring and where they went and who they are. And he was saying that in Africa, he was from the Gambia, and he said his family are the families of the historians. And their job is to record the history of the people. So they start at a very early age about 4 years old, learning this instrument called the kora. So first you get the beat, right? And then once you know how to make the beat, then they start teaching you the history. And your father was so-and-so, and your mother was so-and-so, and they had such and such, and this person begot this person. So they learn the history to the beat of the music like a rapper. And my husband and I were listening to him talk about the way they record history to the beat of music. We said, that's the same thing that the rappers do. They're telling our story to the beat. So our people have always been rhythmic people, and that's how our minds work, according to a rhythm, because life is rhythm. The earth is on a rhythm. And so our people have always used the power of our minds in rhythm. But he explained that that's how you trace history, is through the people. So who you are is important. And as he spoke, that kind of turned a light on in us. We said, that's what it is. Because, when you're that child and you realize that there's something wrong with the society that makes you feel like you're less than worthy of love and less than worthy of life and less than worthy of good treatment, something's wrong. So we wanted to answer the question, what happened? Because we'd studied history and we knew that we had the great pyramids, but there was something wrong with this great civilization, and then suddenly we're in slavery. There was something not being told. So our mission in writing this book, Psychic Trauma, was to discover what happened. Where did we go wrong as a people? And in going back, the journey took us to a place where we saw a pattern. Because when you make a mistake, if you can figure out what you did wrong, then you can undo the problem. So that was our mission, to find out where we went wrong so we could undo the damage and then make it correct. And we discovered some fascinating things in the process. First of all, pretty much everything that you've been taught about history is a lie. And in the Bible, Jesus says the blind can't lead the blind because they all fall into a ditch. We've been following the blind. But of course, you're among the conscious. That's why you're in this room. So we, the conscious, the seeing, have to lead the blind. But what we discovered is that our people go way back, beyond the 6,000 years of recorded history. We have an ancient history, and the science, the mathematics, the astrology, and all these things, astronomy, physics. We had these things in our history. Our people had the genius. And so that's why even in slavery, they could not crush that genius. So our quest was to figure out what happened. And what we discovered, and we tell the story, is that as we built these great civilizations and great empires, we started fighting each other. And our strength as a people was our family structure. Because our brother, Fode Musa Suso, explained that the way we built the great empires and the great civilizations and the great cities was that each family had a task. His family were the educators. You had a family that was the builders. You had the family that were the farmers. You had families that were the masons. I mean, you had families that would master a craft, and so every family employed its people and interacted, and so that's how everybody survived. And we thought, well, that makes sense. Now we know what's happening in our communities, the unemployment, the poverty, and everything. Well, of course, we don't have that system where families run businesses. And children know that they're going to grow up to be the educators, and so they master that, or they're going to be the traders, so they master that. But that's how we built the great empires of Ghana and Songhai and all of that. Because families work together. So the damage that we have among us has to do with the way we were taken away from that family structure. And when Europeans began to explore and travel to Africa, we were already at a very advanced state. But just like what happens and what's happening here in America, when you get to a point where you create wealth, you start fighting each other. And they found in Africa in a state of war, and as what was the custom, fighting sides take prisoners of war. So they began to buy our prisoners of war with guns and whiskey, and then, of course, ship off to America. And when they discovered the strength and the skill that we had, they said, oh, these people, they know how to work, they know how to grow cotton, they know all these skills, they know how to build. And so we became a commodity, big business. Go and get some Africans, and build this country. And we've pretty much been a commodity ever since. They've been making money off of us. But if you had this great civilization, how do you take that and become nothing? So slavery became a scientific experiment to take a human being and transform them into somebody who was just a basic laborer. So what they did, those first Africans that came here, they took them away from their parents and then brainwashed them, programmed them to believe that they came from people who had nothing, knew nothing, and that they were condemned by God to serve white people forever. And they taught that to those first children who didn't have the benefit of their parents to teach them. The science, the math, the arts, none of those things. All they knew was what they had been told by those who held them captive. And slavery became the institution that built the wealth of America. But the way it was successful was to keep those of us enslaved brainwashed and put in motion a system where we would continue to teach our children that they were worthless and condemned by God to be servants. We do things to our children today to crush their spirit, because we've been taught by our parents, and who've been taught by their parents, who've been taught by their parents, who were slaves and did this as a means of survival, keeping our children from becoming aggressive so they wouldn't be killed as slaves. And so in the book, Psychic Trauma, we have a test on page 22 for each person to answer the questions and help them recognize the self-defeating things, the self-destructive things that they've learned as a result of being passed down from this crushing system, so that we can stop crushing our children, we can stop destroying our relationships, and we can rebuild those people that we are, because we are the creations of God. Now, in this journey back to the past, we also discovered that there was a reason why the native people lost this land, because they made the same mistake we made. They had nations of people, and they were fighting each other. They were fighting each other because, again, once you get to a position of great wealth and great affluence, unless you have love and harmony, you're going to fight each other for control. And so as the Europeans traveled here, they found, first of all, a peaceful people who welcomed them, and then those who came were able to kind of instigate some conflict between the natives. And then next thing you know, they're at war. And then next thing you know, this land is being overtaken by invaders. Now, the fascinating thing, when we wrote the book, When Nations Gather, we discovered something that was a piece of the puzzle of what happened. Native people not only are advanced in terms of their understanding of nature, but they have an understanding of the future. And again, we find out that the history that you think you know is a lie. They know of a great past all the way back. See, the earth is not just 6,000 years. The earth has been here millions of years, and civilizations have been here that are much more advanced than us. And we have not only flown before, we have traveled the stars, and there are those who have come here from outside the earth. And so many of the mysteries of the pyramids The Native American people have stories of a time when the earth had two other continents that are now missing, Lemuria and Atlantis. Now we think they're mythical, but actually the Native American people have the story of those places, and their prophets, their future visionaries, told them that there would be a time that this land would be destroyed because we would make the same mistake of those in the past who rose to power, rose to great technology and great advancement, and began fighting each other and destroyed themselves. And that was the continent of Atlantis. And they said that their people come from that era. They were the ones who escaped before the destruction. And the continent of Lemuria on the other side of America. So these are continents that have been destroyed. And we know in the Bible, we hear the story of Noah and the flood, but there were two other destructions before then. And what happened is the earth shifted after the destruction of those continents, and we actually lost the memory of that time. So we know that we only use about 5% of our brain. Where's that other 95%? Our memory has been wiped clean because of a continental shift, because of the destruction of two continents, perhaps nuclear destruction. But the native people, those who came here and conquered, called primitive, they actually have ancient knowledge of a time far beyond what we have been told. And their prophets predicted that unless we learned how to live in peace, we were going to make the same mistake and destroy this continent. And in studying native culture, we began to put some pieces together and realize that mankind has been going through this cycle for age after age after age. What we discovered was that every people have been given a spiritual law. It can be summed up in one word: love. The universe is built on the power of love, which means desire for the well-being of others. So we're designed to cooperate with each other. And the earth will support us as long as we do that. But once we begin to abuse each other, we set in motion self-destruction. And once we do that, we destroy ourselves. Now, every spiritual master, no matter which religion you follow, whether it be Jesus with Christianity, the Prophet Muhammad with Islam, Buddha, or any other spiritual master, has always told us this. But what we do in our ignorance, we take their teachings and we twist it into a religion that supports our mistreatment of each other, and we just totally discard the spiritual laws. So what we discovered in this journey is that we in this time have a responsibility not to allow that destruction to happen again, because we're here on this earth in this time for a purpose. And just like you came to this room because you heard a message, your soul came to this earth at this time for a purpose. And what we discovered from the native people was that they did not lose, many of them, they did not lose the original understanding of the teachings, and knowing that we here as a human family are here on a spiritual mission to learn how to love. That's why we're here. And when we lose that, we destroy ourselves. And what they taught us is that all people, all of mankind have been given that same message. And they said that the red man, the black man, the white man, the yellow man, all positions in 4 positions across the earth, were given this message, and there was a point in time when once we come back together and we recognize that is what we have been taught, then we can save our planet from destruction. So how do we learn how to love when we're living in a society that is so cruel? As I looked at it, how many people have family members? And you don't really like to see them come because they're out of order. You know, you got the sister that can't control the bad kids, and the uncle is always drunk and fighting, and you got to call the police on them, and you know, the nephew that you don't want to come to your house, you know he got a drug problem and he steals. People that are just out of order. But what the native people have said is that the younger brother, the last one to develop, the ones coming from Europe, they're like those that are out of order with the divine law. And that's why when they come places, if you're fighting, they're able to come and conquer you because you have lost your divine law. You're not loving each other anymore. And the only way you can overcome that is to restore the love between you. And they say we have to get younger brother in order. But how do we do that when we, the seeing, are following the blind? We have to change the way we raise the next generation. That's how we change the future. And so, in the process of writing this book, The Female Solution, I looked at what it is that we as women need to do to change the way we raise our children. And of course, I discovered that there's an anger inside of us. How many people know an angry black woman? Always mad. How many of us are an angry black woman? Why are we so angry? We're angry because we have not received love. Because we're living in a society that's been shaped by the younger brother that is out of order with the spiritual law. And so we have a culture that's been created that is hostile toward women. Women who are the givers of life. We're following a cultural attitude that's out of order, imbalanced, and totally anti-God, anti-life, designed to destroy the woman. Because our younger brothers, the ones that's out of order, the Europeans, misunderstood the divine law when they misinterpreted the spiritual law. They took the act of creation, the sexuality, the love between the man and the woman, and made it into something dirty because they misunderstood. And so we're following a belief that teaches us that the act of creation is dirty and the woman, the one who brings life, is sinful and condemned by God. And so therefore we don't respect the act of love, we don't respect the act of creation, we don't respect the woman, and we don't understand the balance between the male and the female. So we have a culture that needs to be corrected, needs to be changed. Because we are all souls inside a body, having a temporary physical experience. And our mission here in coming to this earth is to learn how to love. And that's how we develop into the divine beings that we are. And we've been taught we're made in God's image. What does that mean? The image of the spirit and energy of love. So if you have a teaching, if you have a culture that teaches that women are condemned by God and the first to sin and evil and all of that, then you cannot raise people who have a loving spirit. So that has to be corrected. And it can only be corrected if we change the way we raise our children. But women, in order to give love to the children and teach them those divine laws that our native brothers and sisters tell us we must follow in order to preserve our planet, we must have a culture that enables them to receive love. And we must be able to love each other as women. Find out how you can make a difference too. Be inspired. Watch The Media Connection.